Don't you just hate it when a seemingly solid game gets ruined by faulty gameplay? That's the case with hand, line, and sinker. You, the solo player, have to reel in your fishing line and catch the fish, the 3 players, floating through the water. Now don't worry, they got rid of that horrid control stick spinning mechanic, so that's no problem here. The main problem, however, is how slow the game feels. With a team of 3, they have this little circle to swim around, so they have to turn themselves to where they want to go to avoid the fishing hand. However, this is easier said than done. The single player has to make sure they know where the fish is going to end up, then cast the line to reel them in. The way I look at it, I see this game as more of a bore than anything bad or tedious. However, if you're any of the team of 3, this will be getting on your nerves as you'll always be served by the solo player almost every time you play. There's a word for games like this, but I suppose I'll let you be the judge of that. Coconut conch is where the 3 players have to ground pound the trees to send coconuts down to the solo player rolling around in a barrel. If they hit the solo player, the 3 players win. If they miss, or if the solo player rolls around enough to avoid every coconut within the time limit, the single player wins. Now, I'd personally give this 1 point if it wasn't for the fact that the 3 players have very little space up there to jump and pound the trees. Most of the time you'll end up hopping all over each other or blocking each other's way constantly. This will be more troublesome for the 3 players than it will be for the solo player alone. Both teams have to put up with chance in order to win, and most of the time the team of 3 will end up winning anyhow. I think this is what we had in place of Slot Car Derby. In fact, Rockin Raceway feels like an even worse version of it. Rather than moving the control stick, you're pressing A and B or Z to move your horse from start to finish. If you end up going too fast, of course you're going to slow down until it screws you over, having to leave you in a 2-second flail before you can get back up again. There's carrots that increase your speed and blue carrots that fucks you up. And given you have to go at a certain speed, you'll mostly end up grabbing the blue carrots and not by accident. If you hated Slot Car Derby, it's not like this game is any better. There is of course a chance you'll be winning this, but do you really want to play something that makes turtles or snails look interesting? Now, I don't mind a decent trivia every now and then, but MPIQ just feels like a drag on my end. Toad will ask you a series of questions, and the first person to get 3 answered correctly wins. However, some questions can be far-fetched than others. There will be simple stuff like what color is Mario's hat, or who Mario's young brother is. You know, the easy shit. Then there's stuff like who has the most coins right now, or who has the most stars, something you ought to be keeping in mind since you are playing the game. Then there's questions like how many times have you played a certain board, or what's the current record on a certain game or whatever. How do they expect me to know what my exact record is? In fact, are some of these questions really necessary? I don't really mind something I already know here, but if it's asking me something too stupid or obvious, or something related to minigame records, or hell, how many times has someone landed on a happening space? I am never going to be keeping track of this stuff, and that's just what throws me off with this game. A simple duel minigame done in all the wrong ways, this being Motor Rooter. In this one, you and another have to race over to the end of the course in motor shells, dashing through speed boosts and avoiding lightning to win, and the victor would be the first to reach the end. Why this would end up on the list? Well, just look at it! Here you can move only one section at a time. This can result in plenty of mishaps and accidents. Say you're going for an area with a speed mark and you gotta get there quickly. That's pretty unlikely in regarding how fast you may be going at the time. Either that or you'll end up getting zapped and having yourself slowed down, ruining the race for yourself. If they just allow you to move completely at free will, these issues would have been avoided and this would have been a solid game. But it is what it is. The name alone just speaks for itself. The beat goes on, alright. And on, and on, and on. So much, in fact, that you can almost say it basically drags on. In this minigame, you have to memorize the rhythm the Shy Guys give to you and add another beat to keep it lasting longer. Your options consist of the buttons A, B, and Z. If anyone screws up by any chance, they're kicked out until the last person wins. But in some cases, there is some chance everyone will end up memorizing the beat all the way through, and it'll sometimes just end in a draw. While this is trying to serve as a memory game, this is one that just feels it's lasting much longer than it had to. Last I checked, this game goes on for about 3 minutes or so until the winner is decided, or, as mentioned before, it ends in a draw. No minigame should last this long. And trust me when I say it is not worth the effort. Because at the end of the day, what it all comes down to, this minigame is just an ordeal and just never seems to end when you think it will. And no one wants to end Mario Party. Another minigame where speed can be the downfall? Alright, what happened here? In Cosmic Coasters, you go through this linear course, avoiding Bowser signs, and the team to reach the end wins. I often have no problem with speedy and fast games, but this is another one of those instances where I can be thrown off from going so fast that I end up bumping into a Bowser sign and having myself slowed down. This wouldn't be much of a problem for anyone else, except there will be times where you'll be spending most of the time avoiding one sign just to run into another just as you think you're about to block it off, or will move in the direction it happened to be in. This game will be getting on everyone's nerves if this is the case, and I know it sure did for me. Awful Tower is just as the name implies. In this one you have to hop all the way to the top, going from one block to another until the player to get to the end wins. Now my problem with this, the controls almost feel broken here. To get to one platform to another, you have to tilt left or right, then hit A to jump. If you try jumping then heading in the direction you want, it's not likely to get you far. Not to mention if you're really accident prone, you'll end up walking off the platform then falling down from how slippery this game feels. Not helping is the fact that some platforms are distanced from each other and blocking your way is a hammer bro. If this is supposed to be challenging, I can understand that, but what I can't get around is how faulty this game is. Sure, there's a chance of you winning, but that's if you're really lucky either way. This one can be irritating anytime I play this, and that's something I'm about to get to in the case of Frigid Bridges. Your objective here is to use the 3 pieces at hand to build a bridge, carrying one after another to the end, and the person to reach the flag at the center island wins. Now this sounds like it would have been a decent minigame if it wasn't for one problem, and this will be annoying anyone, if not everyone. Because you're walking on such thin ground, you'll be slipping and falling into the water throughout this game. I can give it some credit for having a good sense of walking on ice, but here it's just ridiculous and a pain in the ass to get behind. Especially since there's a Cheep Cheep in the water that can push you in, and half the time you'll end up walking into it or having it push you into the water when you think you've avoided it completely. My only advice here is to walk fast and have a swift thumb to avoid falling off the ice. There is the possibility you'll luck out and make it through without a scratch, but at the end of the day, this game will just serve as an annoyance from making too many splashes. How unfortunate can you be to run into this nerve-wrecker? In Ice Rink Risk, you're literally put on ice and you have to avoid the spike shells coming towards you. The player to survive long enough wins. I've noticed this to be a trend with half the minigames I played, and I know this to be true in the case of bumper balloon cars, but you're given so little space to run around that you'll be out of commission almost immediately if you're just fucking around all willy-nilly. I've been witness to this almost every consecutive time I play this, and I always get dished out one way or another from running into another player in the way or just messing up and running into it accidentally, especially since there will be another spike shell soon enough during the game. Not only is this game unfair for every player on board, but this can be cruel to the accident prone if they ever have the misfortune of playing this game. Hyper Hydrants was on fire alright, so much that it crashed and burned. The deal here is that there is fire on the loose and you gotta work together in teams to put out as much as you can within the time limit. One person works the pump while the other sprays the fire at will, and the team to put out the most fire is the winner. Sounds like a good minigame, right? Well, it is a good concept in theory. However, the water isn't very effective, nor is it very powerful against the fire at hand. You'll be having a hard time figuring out if you're spraying the flames completely until you pull it off enough times till the time runs out. And in some cases, because of this broken water control, half the time it'll just end in a draw. And keep in mind, both teams have to put up with the same ordeal. Even if you're just pumping the water, the other player will be dealing with the same problem. And assuming you're playing with a complete idiot, you're almost never going to get any flames put out. Why must such a solid game concept be ruined by such poor control? If you suffered from shock, drop, or roll, Crazy Cogs is even worse. Only in this game's case, the 3 players are to run around on a rotating cog and avoiding the bullet bills being fired all over the place, and the cog is completely under the solo player's control. What makes this even worse is that because of the bullet bills, your chances of survival can be slim unless you're skillful enough to avoid them completely or are just lucky enough to dodge them all till the clock hits 0. Here the solo player can still fake them out with that rapidly annoying lever pulling just to get them bombed and kicked out. But as far as this tournament goes, I basically covered all there is to know. It's just a blatant rehash and a terrible one at that. This battle minigame always has a tendency to piss me off. If you're playing this game, you do not want to be, as the name suggests, locked out. The goal is to grab the key matching the symbol on the door one room at a time. One player will be disqualified if everyone else grabs the matching keys and run towards the door as quickly as possible. And the first to make it to the last door wins. This game puts so much pressure on me that I can never see myself enjoying this. If you so much as grab the key you need to progress, there's a chance someone will punch it out of you and steal your win, leaving you behind in the process. I've had this happen to me far too many times for it to be a complete migraine. And what sets this game higher is that this is a battle minigame that will be leaving everyone in distress grabbing those keys. And no coins will be handed out for the person in last place who risked having their money taken away to be part of this despicable game. You can get lucky under the circumstances that you're really moving with this game, but that doesn't change the fact that this game is cruel and a major pain to get behind. And once again, we return to luck-based minigames, and in a battle game of all things. Come on, wasn't Bowser's Big Blast stressful enough? Marigold Chomp would undoubtedly fit into this same category. The objective is to hop on a colored tile until everyone's on board. If the chain chomp gets greeted with an empty space, the circle will rotate again until someone ends up getting chomped. Usually the first player to end up going first and having themselves suffer from this trite. You'd have to be lucky enough to make it all the way through to first place. But no matter the outcome, everyone will be turning into nervous wrecks, hoping they will be spared from the fate of a steel-barred cage. Given the chances that there will be a time the empty space meets the chain chomp, the game will never seem to end just as you think. And with this in mind, the game will be causing even more suffering and distress for everyone involved the further the game goes on. If this doesn't serve as a prime example as to why I hate luck-based minigames as a whole, I don't know what will. Yeah, you know you have a good game on your hands if you can't even get to the end of it. Cheep Cheep Chase is where you have to swim all the way through, avoiding a giant Cheep Cheep behind you. There will be bombs around the water, so you gotta dive underneath to pass them completely. The problems here? This would suffer from the likeness of Skateboard Scamper, a faulty game I can tolerate. What I can't tolerate with this game is how you have to be tapping A at all times, even when diving to avoid the bombs. Even if you're the last person remaining, the Cheep Cheep will always catch up with you and you'll never be able to outrun the damn thing, resulting in a draw. I'm not going as far as to say this minigame is unplayable. There is some sort of strategic technique to it, but I will say that this button masher is one nobody will get a kick out of, assuming you actually run into this and haven't got caught by the Cheep Cheep no matter how fast you're going. If any game were to take the #1 position as the worst minigame of Mario Party 3, Cheep Cheep Chase will fit the bill. No contest. Whew. I apologize for all the venting throughout these minigames. But that wraps that up. This has been the best and worst of Mario Party 3. Hope you enjoyed my perspectives on each minigame, and if you have a different opinion or any thoughts you'd like to share, please say in the comments below. Overall, as a whole, Mario Party is just one wild experience no matter how you look at it. There will be good games and there will be bad, but in the end, the fun is all that matters. Even if some friends are lost in the process. Just keep those tempers in check and brace yourself for what's to come of these games. This is Dragon Boy, signing off. Thanks for listening, everybody.